and trusting yourself. Because I think it's interesting that you really like being a solo worker, owner. You drive all of the decisions on your own, and you love that position of not having outside noise, right? And for me, sometimes I think, well, if I only could trust myself more, then I wouldn't need to surround myself with all these people to like sort of be like, no, you're right. Like, oh yeah, you got.
Yeah, that is a challenge, I think, of working alone, and that is a benefit of having brought on contractors that I can, run things past, or having a community, a network of other business owners to say, what do you think about this? Or this just happened. This client just came to me with this, and I'm not sure how to handle it. So having a network is also really helpful in that way, I think.
What if there are things we never had the opportunity to learn? We've all been to school or training, but there are things they never taught us that actually make a powerful difference in life. I'm here to share with you all the pieces you've been missing: mindset, health, success, and more. And we'll all learn together from guests along the way. We may not have learned it the traditional way, but oh my goodness, let's keep learning how to do things differently. OMG, hello friends, here we are again, and this one is going to be a fun one because I am not just here by myself, and I'm not just here with one guest, but I'm here with two guests today. And if you catch this video on YouTube, it might be even more entertaining, we'll see. But I have a local accountability group of 3 amazing women and myself. We have lunch every month. We've been doing this for 8, 9, 10 years. We're not sure. We're all looking at each other trying to figure that out. And I really have been wanting to bring them onto this podcast. So we are going to talk about a little bit of risk-taking, business owning mindset, and a little bit of money mindset. And I think you're really going to enjoy this. So with me today are Jennifer Mulchandani, who's the founder and CEO of Arlington Strategy. That's a full-service marketing firm in Arlington, Virginia. And Tara Claeys, who's the owner of DesignTLC, an award-winning website design and development agency in Arlington, Virginia. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad you're here. All right. So I always like to begin with our stories. So I'll ask each of you, and you can fight over who goes in what order, what type of business you have, a little more than what I just said, of course, and how you decided to get started in that business.
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So this is Tara, and I have been a stay-at-home mom mostly. When I was in marketing and communications back before the internet, way, way back, and then had my first child and decided to stay home. And so I started a little cottage industry craft business. I have some art skills and some marketing skills. So that turned into a small stationery business that eventually turned into a website business around 2010. And so my business has grown into a really fun and vibrant company that works with mostly independent schools and nonprofits now, as you know, which is a passion of mine. And so I've been able to sort of transition from serving lots of different types of businesses to doing what we call niching down and really specializing in a certain industry, which I really enjoy and which makes us better at what we do because we really know our audience pretty well. So that's my background as a business owner.
Awesome. So it was kind of a process.
It was accidental. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But you were an artist, right? Like that's how you started.
I mean, I
your
think
craft
so,
business,
like an
right?
unofficial one. But yes, I had like some art skills and also some marketing background and a great community of people who supported me as my business grew, which was really fun. A community of mostly women who had me do illustrations for them. And then as technology expanded, I was able to start using that and learning it and teaching myself more and more, which I love technology, as you guys know.
We do. We lean on you for what app do we need now?
Yes. So it allows me to use my art brain as well as my spreadsheet and technology brain. Yeah, that's me.
Awesome. All right, Jennifer.
Well, I'm Jennifer, and my story is super non sequitur, or whatever you call it. I come from a background in public policy and communications in the nonprofit and policy sector. And it was similarly after I had a family and I was looking for, and it was accidental, but I started a business because I saw a need in the community. And it was a retail business that never actually opened. But that whole experience really changed my trajectory into being able to speak to consumers and launch a brand and really think about brand from every angle as a business owner, and then transitioned into consumer marketing. And after many years in that, inside of another startup that was not my own, I decided I didn't want to do one thing. I think I thrive in more chaos than calm, and thought if I started an agency, one, I could pick the people I get to work with, both internally as my team, and then I could really not ever be bored in having only one client or one issue area that I was working on. And so Arlington Strategy, we just hit 12 years.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely not bored, and I sometimes crave a day to be bored.
Well, we all want what we can't have, right? So I glommed onto something there, and I don't want to take us too far off track, but you said a retail business that never ended up opening.
Yeah.
And I wonder how often that happens. What was the story?
I think I even knew that, Jennifer.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, don't we all have to have a good failure in our back pocket? So I was opening a coffee shop, and I branded it Village Buzz Coffee and Tea. I had a logo. I had a lease. I was 2 years in. It was in brand new construction, just down the street on Langston Boulevard here in Arlington, Virginia. And I mean, I saw the building going up, and I said, that's where I need to be. It's on the right side of the road on the commuter traffic, which is critical for coffee shops. It was going to have a family-friendly vibe to it because I was on my second kid and had nowhere to go on a rainy Saturday morning, is exactly what spurred my desire to do this. I had the equipment. I'd been to training, conferences, and the building ended up being condemned by the county before it ever could open.
How did we not know this?
Wow.
It sat empty for 7 years, that building. But my lease, they sent me back my piddly little deposit for my rent and said, sorry, you can't open here. And we lost so much money doing that. Wow. So that's when I went and got the JOB and never actually opened my coffee shop. But maybe one day.
Yeah. And you were okay. This isn't actually what I was imagining I was going to ask you about, but you were okay. And that is an important lesson.
Yeah. I don't remember having time to really mourn it. It was it was more life is practical. I need to work. I need to start generating an income after a long time of investing money. And, I think if for a long time, it was just my assumption. I was just waiting for the next right space. Mm-hmm. But then eventually I was happy where I was, and I decided to keep expanding my family. And it was sort of like, oh yeah, that was a long time ago now. So it wasn't ever like, oh my God, I failed. And
right. It's like a God bless the broken road kind of thing. Like, who knows, you wouldn't have ended up where you ended up if that hadn't happened.
I don't think I would have had the third child if I was opening a coffee shop, if I was up in the morning every day. And you know what I mean? It's
dealing with employees, hourly employees, all of the things that are really hard.
It's like, it never opened. And I love, there's something about retail I love. I love little shops. I love local, a lot of the places we all know and love here. And so I wanted to be part of that kind of community, but it's also wildly, wildly risky in a way that, and we've talked about this before, that, I think each of us have, and our fourth partner who's not here today in this group, probably has the biggest sort of overhead risk in her business compared to
a franchise.
Compared to ours. Part of my impetus in choosing agency, like in doing something, it was like I started it at home with my existing laptop and a $50 business license, right? Like really low risk after losing a ton of money and having a big risk, a lien on my house to take a loan and all that kind of stuff. I wasn't ready to sort of swallow that again and invest my family's livelihood into starting a business. And so I think there's so much around risk taking, and I have so much appreciation for entrepreneurs who really put their lifestyle on risk, right? Like if this doesn't work, I'm going to have to sell my house, or if this doesn't work, I'm going to whatever the consequences for what I do that, you take risk as you take on employees and rent, and certainly there's costs, but the level of uncertainty that's involved in what I carry in terms of a financial risk as a business owner is radically different than being in a brick and mortar environment.
Absolutely.
In a business.
Had you worked in a coffee shop or anything?
Yeah. Well, as part of it was actually a very cool story of how competitors can support each other, which is something we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
So I was I ended up getting a lot of press around my concept. I was on the front page of the food section of the Washington Post. I was in the local Arlington newspaper because I was that close to opening. And another coffee shop owner who's since moved on from this area called me up one day and was like, "Hey, come in. I want to talk to you." And I was like, "Who's this? Is he snooping?" But that wasn't what it was. He was like, "What do you want to know? I'm an open book." Amazing. And I actually entered, especially when my opening kept getting delayed because it was delayed for a long time. I ended up going and working part-time in his coffee shop, which was a very successful shop here in Arlington, for over a year, and to learn the business from that side of it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, and he was like, "No, I'm not opening over there. So you're not my competitor. We're part of the same." There's a really cool culture in specialty coffee nationally. There's associations, and there's this feeling of like, we all lift each other up. We're all kind of competing against the behemoth, which, the mermaid in Starbucks. And that was like one of the things I was like, oh my God, I really love this industry. And getting to choose where you work. I think that example of, I want to be involved in this because it's cool.
Yeah.
It wasn't because I was going to make $1 million. It was never on the table, but it was like, this is a really cool place to kind of choose to be in that business. And I do miss that culture of that industry is really,
So interesting. And I don't know, did you catch the OMG people? OMG. Okay, so actually this takes us into what I was going to ask next, because I wanted to ask both of you, when you were deciding to start your business, and Tara, I know yours was a bit of a flow, one into the next, but were there things you were worried about? Were there risks you were nervous to take? Or did you set it up in such a way where you didn't feel like there were risks? Or what was that decision like?
Yeah, I'm not into risk taking at all. So I, have very low risk throughout my business career. Even when I had my stationery business, I had to purchase equipment and paper and things like that, and always tried to keep it very in line so that I was at least breaking even. And so I think when I transitioned to a business that didn't require any inventory, really, it was a big relief to me to not have that and to only be myself. So people will say that your time is money, and it certainly is, but it's also, you're not actually losing cash if you work 23 hours in the day. Yes, that has a value to it for sure, but it's not a value that you're cashing out or into. So for me, I think my mindset is probably not very good in that way, because I have not valued my time in the way that I should have throughout the beginning of this process, more so now. And as I've taken on contractors and had more of a commitment to pay people, that scares me, as you guys know. And so, I like to be able to just keep them on as contractors and know that if my business slows down, I'm not committed to paying them. Because one of the hard things about any business is you just don't know what tomorrow brings, whether it's a retail business or something else. You can't predict your cash flow. It's not like getting a paycheck. So so I'm fortunate that I have a partner who also has a paycheck. So we've had steady income. So it was never like my, food on the table was being risked by how much business I got. So I think I definitely feel comfortable with the way that it's worked for me. If I had started younger, I may have been more into investing in the business than I have. So
I'm still not going to let you totally get away with saying that your mindset wasn't good.
Yeah.
Maybe it was right for you.
Right.
She also should have something. I should have valued my time differently.
Yeah.
But it's like,
but in hindsight, people will tell me that. I've been to business conferences.
Right.
And people will
the
say,
rules
right? Yes. Yes. And we've talked about that too, that I love what I do. So if I'm spending extra time, I'm not clocking in and clocking out, and I like to do it. So I'd rather sit and work on a website than read a book a lot of times. So that's my choice. And that's a benefit of working for yourself, is that you can make those choices, at least when you're in a service business where
Yes.
you're working remotely versus a brick and mortar, which our neighbors opened an ice cream shop many years ago, and we invested in it and watched them grow that business and watched them have to go in to work when the people didn't show up and have to be in place the whole time. And so if you really love it, then you have to understand that that's part of it, which you might not love all the time. So I think there's no job we love all the time. But
No, there's not.
But having flexibility is really important.
Yeah. And you are kind of, I think, in the middle of a spectrum from I'm doing this at home and I can do it however much I want to our other friend, Michelle, who owns a franchise and has people coming into work every day. You have a little bit more control. You have an office, you have employees. So, there's a little bit of what she was talking about, but tell us a bit more about your decision process.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you all have also supported me through all of these different hiring decisions to grow the team. And we're still very small. I mean, my employee load is still like 6 people, right? So, and then we use contractors, which are much more flexible. But even in that, with each hire, there's this, oh my God, what am I getting myself into? OMG.
OMG.
See what I did there? There really is, there's this like, am I ready to commit to this level of cash flow requirement? And and sometimes it is out of my pocket. You do pay yourself last in this type of business when there's limited dollars on the table. We've been very lucky overall and very successful overall that, in the wash, I haven't taken hits, but it's been very measured. But what I have found is every time I am ready for that next level of risk, the payoff it's almost immediate. Not to say there haven't been times that I didn't go, ugh, that didn't work out, but certainly it hasn't been all smooth sailing 100% of the time. But typically for me, I think I am slow to take the risk. It's not, I think I leaned way more cautious. And so it's with other people's support, including my husband, including, this group of business supporters and friends, that I get ready mentally, emotionally. I get the books ready, I get the cash flow ready, and then I pull the trigger, and then it pays off.
Yeah.
But it's well thought through risk. Mm-hmm. It's not. I mean, I almost right when the pandemic hit, it was like April, whatever it was. My lease was up in October or September of 2020. And so it was spring of 2020 that we were in the middle of, are we staying here? Am I taking the business back home? But we were in growth mode, and I had a letter of intent on a much nicer space, much bigger space. I mean, I was like, they have a kitchen with running water in this space. I bring dishes home every day from my office. So this was going to be a really big deal. And they gave us this great deal on year one because of COVID, right? But then I was looking ahead. I was like, well, when year one is over, my rent's going to be more than double what I'm paying currently. But I was going to have way more, but in the time, like I freaked and I pulled the LOI and I stayed put in my tiny little space, and I'm grateful in hindsight, but at the time it was one of the most stressful decisions I had to make in the business, because I didn't want to be hiding from growth. And that was what was representative. And of course I could have absolutely no idea that we were going to be home a lot longer than, a few months or whatever we were anticipating in that moment. But I that's an example of me not letting myself take a risk. I was just not comfortable.
The self-image we have in our minds, the way we think of ourselves, is such a powerful thing and really directs everything that we do. And one piece of that is feeling good about how we look. So if you want to feel good in your skin, wash your face every night, make sure to moisturize, and check out my favorite skincare, which is Derm Results Advanced. You can find it at omgteachme.com/recommendations.
I think it's important to know yourself. So, what you're saying about you're cautious, you know yourself and you trust your decision-making process. And I think also another part of this is just listening to you talk. For me, I have learned over many years that I really am a solo worker. I like to work by myself. I don't like to have chit chat during the workday. I like to just drill down. So for me, having, an office environment or having people around me is not a good fit. So I know that. So my choice was driven by that without my even knowing it.
Yeah.
And I think you're more of a people person.
Jennifer and I are the chit chatters.
Yeah.
We were laughing as you were saying that.
So I think, I kind of want to get right to the point. So for me, it works out better to have contractors who are remote and we check in and I know them, but they're not coming and telling me about their evening plans the night before and sharing their stories, which then you also feel you're supporting their livelihood, right? When they're on your payroll too, which is another risk.
Sure.
It's for me, like, scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you came around to that, because in many episodes of the podcast, we've talked about using intuition in making decisions. And it doesn't have to be like a flash of intuition that, oh my goodness, I need to do this. It could be that you're thinking it and you're weighing the pros and cons and you're sleeping on it, so to speak. And trusting your gut is still in play there, even if it's some time to think it through.
Mm-hmm. I think the intuition is sort of what you translate that to, like, it forces you to ask the right questions. It's not that I'm necessarily making decisions based on just feeling or gut, but the feeling or gut helps me probe differently. I've come to learn, and this is like a late in life discovery, that I process slowly. I think if you would have asked me when I was much younger in my career, I would have been like, oh, I'm very decisive. It takes me a while to take in all of the information and churn it and ask follow-up questions and think. And so, like, knowing that now about myself, I don't put myself in a position where I'm going to have to be decisive on the spot if I'm just gathering information for the first time. But the intuition is there, and often it's right. Like, often my gut assumption at the beginning, or gut feeling, like, proves itself, and maybe by design. But I see it more as like a guiding principle, if you will.
I agree. And sometimes it's hard to figure out what's all the noise coming at us from other people and what is it that we're really wanting to do. So it's a challenge for sure.
And trusting yourself, because I think it's interesting that you really like being a solo worker, owner. You drive all of the decisions on your own, and you love that position of not having outside noise, right? And for me, sometimes I think, well, if I only could trust myself more, then I wouldn't need to surround myself with all these people to, like, sort of be like, no, you're right. Like, oh yeah, you got, like, I feel like I need a lot of external, not like you're doing great, but more, I don't have a strong amount of trust in my own, output.
Yeah. That is a challenge, I think, of working alone. And that is a benefit of having brought on contractors, that I can, run things past, or having a community, a network of other business owners to say, what do you think about this? Or this just happened. This client just came to me with this and I'm not sure how to handle it. So having a network is also really helpful in that way, I think. Yeah.
So I'm going to challenge Jennifer on something, because I agree with Tara, what you just said, but I'm going to challenge you on something, because if you go way back to one of the episodes last summer with Jen Liss, we talked about using fun to overcome doubt. And this is not really related to fun, but she kind of challenged me on something that I am thinking about with you too, because she turned it around and asked me, well, how did you decide to start the podcast? And I was like, well, I wanted to. And then I talked to some people and I got their opinion. And she said, well, did you pick the people that you knew would say what you wanted them to say? And so there's no right or wrong answer to that, but maybe you're picking the people that are going to tell you what you want them to tell you, and could be a good thing.
Yeah, except, I don't disagree that we surround ourselves with people that lift us up, right?
Yeah.
We should be. If everyone's like, oh, you're full of shit. Like,
Right.
it's interesting because like we just went through another hiring process. We're bringing on a new person on my team, and I mean this truthfully. When I said they asked me, how will I be successful, and I was like, I don't want a yes person on the team.
Mhm.
I definitely want someone who's going to not be afraid to share their perspectives, or that's why I want diversity in all of its forms, because if it is just people parroting me, then I'm spending a lot of money to get that pat on the back. You know what I mean?
And I don't even mean necessarily people parroting you. It's just interesting to think about, because maybe it's the opposite. You don't want a no person either, you know, and you don't want someone just shooting everything down, which there are people who are like that. And what brought me here, and the listeners have heard this before, was a direct selling business that I was doing for a long time. And I watched so many people start businesses like that, where there's very little overhead. If you're spending a lot of money to start a direct selling business, you need to pick a different one. There's very little overhead, but they would hit a conversation with one or two people early on, and it would take them totally out of the game. Like, that person said, what in the heck are you doing? That's crazy. Out of the game. Done. So you do have to be careful and find the people who will talk it through with you and maybe think as closely like you as is appropriate, or I don't know.
But what you're saying though, like I is entrepreneurship a fit for everybody? And I feel like if you have, whether it's a coffee shop dream or a stationery dream or a direct selling business, and that's like where your passion lies, and like one or two people like telling you like you're nuts, and that makes you go, okay, you're right, I'm not going to do my business, then you're probably not equipped to actually ride the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. I talked to somebody recently who said something, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it was basically like, you can't be an entrepreneur unless like you're somewhat irrationally like confident about something. Like,
I agree with that.
Right?
Yeah.
You have to have some intrinsic belief in what you're pursuing, even if the world doesn't.
And I think you do have to have people who will ask you those questions and make you think it through, because I have some colleagues who come up with ideas, they buy domain names like,
every day,
like a coffee,
like candy.
Yeah. And so, they always have ideas and they'll run them by me. And, I'm a pretty practical person, and I will be the one to say, like, here are the things that I think you need to address. I'm not sure that's going to work that way, but maybe there's another way you could make it work, so that you don't get caught up in the enthusiasm and the excitement. And I mean, I've started a partnership, and I can relate to that enthusiasm of starting something new with someone, especially, and you can get caught up in that. So to have somebody say, look down, like from, 1,000 miles above, and tell you, I'm seeing these things you should address or think about to catch you, so you don't, So I think there's a balance. People who will be honest, who know you, and also who know the business. Like, you spent the time in that coffee shop, so you could see if it was the right thing for you, and you could learn about the challenges and the pitfalls and the things that might be coming your way that would be more uncomfortable. So researching, and also finding trusted people who know you. Yeah.
Yes. So I wanted to talk to you about input and help from others. And we kind of came about that naturally, which is great. And maybe what it is that you want a variety of people in your life. Maybe some that are a bit more prone to go along with whatever, some that aren't. People will be thoughtful. And then the fortitude to be an entrepreneur is the ability to take those opinions and make your own decision.
Yeah.
And not feel like you have to follow whatever it is they're saying.
Right. Mm-hmm. Which is the benefit of having a variety, because then you're not just hearing one person and saying and going along with that, but measuring it all. It's like making a pros and cons list,
which I love.
Spreadsheet
I bet you love too.
Yeah. So taking all that and then coming out at the bottom as to whether it's worth it.
Right.
Yeah. So you're willing to take those risks.
Yeah. Exactly.
Risks. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So I also want to talk about money mindset, because we've talked about this already. There are risks when you start a business. They might be big, they might be small, there might be a big investment, there might be a small investment. There's certainly the value of your time. When you started your business, did you make specific income goals? Did you make a whole plan of where you were going to be? Did you feel good about that, or did it make you super uncomfortable? Talk to me about that. The faces.
You said the G word.
Goals.
Yes.
Goals.
Yeah. Not the B word, budget. How about that one? Yeah.
So I just want to, tell us more about that. And did it make you uncomfortable? And how did you deal with that, if so?
Oh gosh. I like every day. This is such I'm like, Jennifer, you are living the life you're choosing. Success is whatever you define it to be. I'm talking to myself here. All this, I wouldn't trade what I'm doing. I really wouldn't, in terms of all, on the net bottom line of all of it. But when I think of just that money piece, I'm still pissed off all the time, because it's like, why have I not cracked this nut? Why am I not making what I think I'm worth? Why am I not, and I've worked with a business coach, and I read the books, and I know about pricing strategy, and I know about cutting overhead, and I know about what my margins should be. And this isn't a lack of knowledge on the how-tos. It's all the other things that we talk about in terms of growth and scale, and getting to a point where I feel like it's worth it at the end. And, I have a plan, and I have a plan for exit that if it all goes to plan, then it will, in my mind, measure up the worth it. And just talking dollars and cents here, not the rest of it. Mm-hmm. But it's like, it's also unfair that to myself, I think that like I get so caught up in that side when I'm like, I started by saying I want to be doing this, and
you're happy.
I don't want to, and I'm happy with on the balance of it all when you take in other considerations. But I feel like we still live in a society where so much is measured by financial success and wealth. And Tara, like you, I'm married to somebody who has the steady, predictable, not risky income, and there's a feeling of like dependence. And that offends my feminist sensibilities and offends my, if I was on my own truly, if I had to do this on my own, would I be doing what I'm doing? Or am I just kind of living my white girl privilege of being able to have this lifestyle job? And that pisses me off too. So I think, I don't forget how you phrased the first question, but like money as a measure, money and success, like money mindset, like so wrapped up into it.
Oh, well, yeah.
So
let me just ask you before I go over to Tara, is it possible that there's something in you that you're kind of holding yourself back without realizing it when it comes to having more income? Do you think that could be a thing, or the pieces just haven't fallen together yet?
I think certainly there's definitely things I make decisions that hold me back, and it's around some of the risks. I think I know the pathway to growth, but it takes deciding I'm ready to invest in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's not a button to push. It's work. It's all work. And I actually had a very interesting conversation with my husband, and it was one of these situations where I was pissed off for a day, and then I was like, guys, you're right. I said something about like, well, it's fine for me going in late every day. It's not like it makes a difference.
Oh gosh.
And he's like, what do you mean? Of course it makes a difference. I was like, you're saying if I spent more time like working, this would go better? He's like, yes. And I was like, no, that's not true. And I'm stubborn, stomping I was not, in my mind I was. But then I was like, it's the work. Am I willing in this moment to do the work?
Yeah.
And it's not magic, and I'm not pouting and waiting for my payoff. I just haven't yet sort of done the work.
And listeners, she does have a successful business. Yeah. So we're talking about next level is what we're talking about.
We are talking about next level.
For me, because I started as like just a little hobby, right? I remember when I earned enough money to buy a minivan when my kids were little, and I thought I had made it, right? And like similarly, the feeling of I've contributed something when my husband was the main breadwinner in the family. It wasn't even my intention. We had made the decision for me to stay home knowing that there would not be income. So having any income was like, wow. So I think that for me, starting out that way has influenced how I treat anything that comes my way, which is like, wow, I'm grateful to have this. And I understand what you're saying. I never want to say I'm going to earn. My goal is to earn this much money. For me, I think it's my ego that I just don't want to make less. And I think a lot of the money stuff is about ego if you're not having to support your family, right? So for me, it's great to have had that success because I have not lost money. I've always earned more every year, and there's going to be a year where that does not happen. And it might be this one. Who knows? You just never know. So I think trying to take the ego out of it and know that this is what I chose to do, what I like to do, and what now is actually partially supporting my family because it's grown enough to do that is good for my ego. But it's all about how you feel about yourself. And it's not even your fault necessarily if you don't, if the economy is doing something or your client has a change in their business. And so your main client has to cut back or those types of things. So I think charging more is the thing that I try to lean into, which is understanding that I'm worth it.
There's a whole discussion there, isn't there?
Yeah. And I've gotten much better at that because as I've grown my business and become more confident in what I know that I do a really good job, and I know that I serve my clients really well, and that even if, on an hourly basis, I don't think you can really necessarily even put so much of a value on that sometimes. So I just have to believe that I'm worth it, and starting to put a price tag on there where I'm like, this may be too much. And sometimes it is. And most of the time it's actually not. And so I think having the confidence to do that is helpful in supporting all of what I just said. So, yeah.
It's interesting. I read an article once, and there's no way I'm going to remember where or when this was, that basically said 99% of women business owners undercharge.
Yes. Oh, I totally believe that.
Yeah. And from what you're saying, there's such a lot of self-confidence and self-worth that gets tied into that. And what a shame that statistic is true. So raise your rates, everyone.
Yeah.
But money mindset is one of the top topics that listeners of this podcast glom onto. I can see it in the numbers. It's just such a huge
important. Well, I'll
thing.
say having a mindset around your business. I changed this a few years ago. I read a book called Profit First. I don't know if you guys, I know we've talked about it during our lunches, but that has really completely changed my approach to my finances, in that I actually do, because I'm not a Schedule C business. Is that Schedule C? What is it? S Corp. I'm not an S Corp. Sorry, wrong tax term. I'm not an S Corp. I don't have like a paycheck every month. So for most of the first years of my business, whatever was left after I paid my credit card bills that were for my business was mine. Now I really do divide it. Yeah. So I actually have a spreadsheet, and every month I go in and look at what I made, and I take 30% out and I put it in a money market fund for my taxes. And I look at how much my expenses were, and they should be between 20 and 30%. And most of the time they are. And then I take another 30 or 35% as my payment. And then what's left is usually 5%. That's profit that stays in the account. And that has changed because now I look forward to the first of the month, every month, to see how I did and measure it. So I highly recommend that book. And just thinking about if you are sort of a small entrepreneur starting out, it's not always the way you think about it. You do just have a checkbook or, your bank account, and you just kind of fly with it.
Yeah.
So organizing it has been really helpful.
Thank you for that. And I will put that book in the show notes, everyone, so that you can find it, because I would agree, no matter what type of business, I've been guilty of this for years, is I pay what I need to pay, and whatever is left over, I'll shove it into the family account, but that's not really a business way to think.
Nope.
So it does change how you treat things if you flip it.
It totally does. We only converted to an S Corp a year or so ago as a business. And what that meant, because the leftovers was my income. It was the same as profit. And it's really hard to think about that when really you as the business owner should be making a salary commensurate with your business and your experience in your industry. and you should still also have profit on top of that
Yeah,
to either reinvest in growth or take an additional payout or whatever you want, or give bonuses or all that. So switching over, it was all the mechanism. Then I do get a paycheck every time we process payroll. I have payroll. I make sure I'm fully funding my 401k that way. I make and maximizing my match through the company. So the mechanism of taking control of the finances, and also in the early years of my business, my husband, because he was just kind of more the guy who liked to do it, handled the financial side, and I felt very disconnected. And so like every now and then we'd have a talk about like, what am I making? And it would become very emotional for me because I wasn't using the numbers. And as a business owner, like even if and I consider myself, pretty analytical, but also very creative, and I'm in a creative business. And so being able to look at the numbers and use them as a tool, as opposed to, I suck, I'm not making enough.
Right.
But it's the ego stuff. But I think as a business owner, like to mature as a business owner is to really start to use your numbers as part of your business, as opposed to like a measurement of your worth.
And making sure you're not losing money, right? I'm a huge I Love Lucy fan, and I don't know if anybody else likes I Love Lucy, but there's the salad dressing episode where she and Ethel make this delicious salad dressing. Everybody loves it. And so they start making it in bulk, and they go on TV and they make an ad that talks about how great the salad dressing is, and they get tons of orders. It's in the mail, of course. And then, of course, Ricky figures out that they're losing money on every jar. So then they go on TV and they talk about how terrible it is, and people pull their orders back.
Oh my gosh, I don't remember that episode.
So I think about that. Like, make sure you've costed things out, even your time, and you have staff you're paying. So run the numbers.
All right. Well, I'm going to force us to cut ourselves off because otherwise I think we could go all day.
I'm ready for lunch.
I know. We have made them wait, listeners, until after we were done before they could eat. So quickly tell us, where can people find you if they wanted to connect with you on social media or find your website or something like that?
I'm arlingtonstrategy.com, and I'm on LinkedIn, Jennifer Mulchandani, Instagram, all the places.
Perfect. Yeah. Good.
DesignTLC.com and LinkedIn, Tara Claeys.
Awesome. And I'll put those in the show notes too. Okay, last question that I ask everyone. What is a song that has good memories attached to it or feel a feeling of nostalgia? And we will add it to our list.
This is going to be fun because we're going to have totally different vibes of music. So I thought about this a lot. When I think about nostalgia, I think about crying. So I think about like nostalgia for me means like sentimental, sad. So there are many songs, but I thought about it. And so there's a song from the soundtrack and the Broadway musical Wicked called For Good. And the first time I heard it was when my son was in a play. It's in elementary school when he was super little. And then my daughter and I became very big fans of Wicked. And the meaning of the song is very deep. The lyrics are very good. And it basically is about how we can help each other be better people.
Oh, I love it.
And so that's, me, that's like a big thing for me. And so for me, that song it harkens to a lot of my inner feelings and values, and then also has connections to my kids. So it makes me, there are many, but that is one I
love it. I can't wait to listen to it.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, Jennifer?
So I'm going to go with Southern Cross, which I believe is Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
Yeah.
Which I, in 1994, sailed on semester at sea around the world, and I was in college. I met my now husband on that, but that song it's on every semester at sea playlist. My son just went on semester at sea 30 years after his father and I did. And so I can't hear that song without reminiscing about that experience.
That's a great song.
Yeah. I love it. All right. Well, you heard it here first. Check out the Nostalgia OMG Teach Me playlist. I'll put the link in the show notes. And thank you both so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
awesome.
Good.
Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. OMG, did you know that we have mini episodes every Friday as well? Make sure to follow OMG Teach Me in your favorite podcast app so you get all the goodies. And if you're just finding this podcast and you're kind of wondering where to start, I have a curated mini series for you to help you stop self-sabotaging, because we all do it. So head over to www.omgteachme.com and sign up when you get the pop-up box. We may not have learned all these things in school, but they sure are powerful now.